Hello, Greek students. I'm Rob Van Hoff, and I'm teaching first-year Greek using Bill Mounce's Fourth Edition of Basics of Biblical Greek. I taught 11 years using the Third Edition, and this will be the first year I'm using the new Fourth Edition, which has some pros and cons. But what I want to do is just go through the first example or the first problem from each of the sections of the homework. And my plan is to do this throughout the chapters of the book, Lord willing, to help you as you sit and orient your mind to do the homework, just to walk you through the first one. And some of these we do live in class, of course, but I wanted to do this on video also. So we'll be looking here at exercise 6, which is the first homework assignment that actually is the rubber meeting the road and with respect to reading Greek. And so you'll be familiar with this page and the next from the workbook. Again, this is from Zondervan, Basics of Biblical Greek, a Fourth Edition by Bill Mounce, and it is the workbook. So what we're going to do here is, now on my accordance here, I just have the Third Edition block here, so it'll look better in your textbook. But basically, from chapter 6, we're learning what's called the beginning of the first and second declension. And so what you see here is 2, 1, 2. And what that means is that the masculine and the neuter are under the 2. That means the masculine and the neuter are second declension nouns, whereas the feminine in the middle is the first declension. I think the reason they just did masculine first, then feminine, and then they put neuter next. That's the order from left to right. And so, but it turns out that masculine and neuter are both nouns whose stem end in an omicron. And so that is, like we see hologos here and to ergon, or ergon rather. Whereas the feminine or first declension are nouns whose stem end in either an eta or an alpha. So that's an important rule you want to learn about nouns. But what we're going to do here is look at our homework, and we're going to come back to this chart. What we see is the first 2 rows are singular. The rows 3 and 4 are plural. And we're going to build this paradigm up in chapter 7. But right now we're just learning the 2 first cases that we're introduced to, which are the nominative case, that's the case of the subject, and the accusative case, which is the case of the direct object. And if that is a difficult concept for you, it will get to it eventually. You'll get used to it. For now, we just want to learn to use this table. And in class, we will address specific questions that you might have. So I'm going to go back and forth between this table and the homework. So our first exercise throughout Mounce is going to be parsing. This is going to be true pretty much every chapter of homework. The second will be warm-up, and the third and final section of our weekly homework will be translation. So parsing, warm-up, and translation. We're going to see that pattern over and over again. We're going to do some parsing. That is, we see a word, and we're going to bring our understanding and our analytical toolkit to it and break it down. And then we're going to do some warm-up, which are mini translations. They're not always complete sentences. Sometimes, most often, just phrases, and not necessarily from Scripture. With translation, it's usually going to be either passages directly from the Greek New Testament or from the Septuagint, sometimes simplified, but I think for the most part, they're right out of the Bible. So from the get-go, from chapter 6 on, you're going to be translating the Word of God, which is really wonderful. And that's one thing I really like about Mounce's work and why I've used it for over a decade now in teaching Greek. Okay, so parsing, we're going to just do number 1 together. So what we read here, we notice a few things. We have the word anthropon, and we notice we have an alpha with I'll write above here, we have an alpha, and we have, do you remember what that kind of breathing is? See, breathing can either be that or that. Well, the one on the right is what we call a rough breathing. That would be ha, but that's not what we see. We see a smooth breathing, so that means it's just ah. And then we see the accent. We have an acute accent. So that means of this word that has three vowels, or three syllables rather, the first gets the stress. Anthropon. So if we were thinking of this musically, it would be da da da, da da da, not da da da, and not da da da, but da da da. So anthropon. So we need to get used to that, a little bit of musicality with the stresses in Greek, with the accents. So anthropon. Well, you might, if you've done your vocab, you know this sounds an awful lot like anthropos with the sigma at the end. But then we have to account for this letter nu. So what we're going to do is we need to refer to our chart if we haven't memorized it yet, and we need to go here and look and say, where do we see the letter nus at the end? We see one here with logon. We see one here with graphein and horon. And in the neuter column on the far right, we see it twice in a row here. Ergon, ergon. So we can eliminate graphein as the paradigm, or horon, because we don't see an eta or an alpha. Rather, what we see, if I go back over here, is an omicron nu. So our ending is omicron nu. Remember, that's not a V, that's a N. Omicron nu. So that leaves our candidates then to either accusative singular in the masculine, like logon, or neuter nominative singular or accusative singular, ergon, ergon. And this is where you need to know your vocab. If we go and look at I'm not going to pull it up here, but if you look at your vocab, you're going to see the lexical form, that is the entry in the dictionary, as anthropos with the sigma, anthropos. And then you're going to see a definite article, masculine definite article, ho. What does that mean? That means that this is indeed going to follow the paradigm of the second declension, masculine, and it's going to be the accusative singular. So it's going to follow this same paradigm of logon. So when we fill this out then, what we fill out, the case, we write, make that a little smaller here. We write accusative. The number is singular. The gender is masculine. The lexical form then, that is the form that we're going to see when we look it up in the dictionary. Anthropos. My sigma is kind of ugly, but that's okay. And then the inflected meaning here, that is, the inflected meaning is the meaning of the inflected form in the far left column. So the inflected meaning of anthropon is man, person, something like that, but as the object, not as the subject, as the object. Remember, the accusative case is the case of the direct object. Okay, excellent. So that just gives you, so all these exercises you're going to do, some of them are definite articles, so you'll have to look at your definite article chart from chapter 6. There's a definite article, there's a definite article, and there's a definite article. And remember, when it has a 2x, that means there's two possibilities. Two possibilities. Okay, let's move on to our warm-up. This is page 12 of Mounce's Beginning Biblical Greek, or Basics of Biblical Greek workbook, 4th edition, and number alpha here. So the warm-ups are numbered according to the Greek alphabet, alpha, And it says, let's just read this together. He hora erchetai. He hora erchetai. Well, we're going to have to do some work here. And what I encourage students to do, and I think some of the most successful students have done this, is they mark up a sentence. And we see, first off, okay, Mounce, before we learn verbs, he's going to give us glosses. So this little bit here in the bracket is a gloss. And what the gloss means is that it's translating that for us. Erchetai. Erchetai means he, she, or it comes. He, she, or it comes. Because Greek, in the indicative verbs, and even in the non-indicative verbs for that matter, the Greek verb does not encode gender. Now, if you've done Hebrew, you know that the Greek verb encodes gender, but it does not in Greek. So it could be either he, she, or it comes. So Greek is very similar in this regard to English, where the word comes doesn't tell us gender. We can say he, she, or it. So this is the verb. So I'm using green for the verb. I don't know if I'll always do that, but that's our verb. And he already gives us a translation. That means we have to identify the subject, or this other piece here, he hora. He hora. And if we look at our chart, we will see, and we've learned our vocab, that it's actually right here, he hora. There's no other candidate for this. And the definite article is the feminine nominative singular, he, meaning the, and hora is our. So if I want to bring that analytical info here, I can say this. I can come over here, maybe where there's more room, and I can write he hora like this. And I know my Greek is a little sloppy here. I'll try to be a little more careful. We would parse this as a, according to, we would say that it is nominative case, it is singular, and it is feminine. Nominative, singular, feminine. And nominative, remember, that means it's the subject. It's the case. The nominative case is the case of the subject. That means this is the subject of the verb, the subject of the sentence. So, he hora, the hour. The hour. So that means our translation then, if I go to here and let's do purple, the hour comes. That's it. The hour comes. Okay, that's our warm-up. Now again, there's a bunch of others, warmer-uppers here for you. And then finally, we're going to look at translation. We'll do translation number 1. Again, this is from Mounce's 4th edition. We'll do our verb in Greek, or our verb in green. He says, I send. Apostello. Apostello. Remember the accent is on the epsilon there. Apostello. And that means I am sending. I am sending. And so we can just write that. Well, I won't yet, but this is our verb. I know that green doesn't come across very well, does it? Let me do a darker. I send, or I am sending. We'll learn that later, but it's what we call a present continual action. Apostello, I am sending. Then we have something here that's our object. This is our object. We know the subject is I. The subject is encoded in the verb in this instance. I am sending. I send. So we know that ton angelon, whatever it can mean, it's not the subject. And as we saw with our parsing, anthropon, that is the accusative, the omicron nu ending for the accusative. Well, if we learn our vocab, we know that our lexical form of angelon is angelos, like that. Angelos with the sigma. That means it's masculine. So this is what we would call accusative, singular, masculine, noun. And you can, while you do this research and through your book, you can actually write these little notes on your workbook. I think that's really helpful. You can use color coding if you like. So what is an angelos? It is a messenger or an envoy or an angel even. It's where we get the word angel. Remember, with the double gamma, we have a nasalization of the first so that we get ung. We don't say agalon, we say angelon. So what does this mean then? It means, I send or am sending, and we have a definite article, the messenger, or the angel, or the envoy, something like that. So the messenger is the translation of the accusative here, ton angelon, ton angelon. Now, if let's say we wanted to change a sentence and say, I am sending the man, well, all we would have to do is change, if we changed ton angelon to ton, and just take that word that we had as word number 1 for the exercise of parsing, and we would use the inflected form there, anthropon, not the lexical form. The lexical form is anthropos. That's the form in the dictionary. The inflected form is the form with the modified ending. If we just put apostello ton anthropon, all we would do is we would then translate to I send the person or the man. That's all we're doing here. We're learning to differentiate case, number, and gender of nouns. So drill down on this, do the homework, you'll get it. It's just like when you had to learn math and you had to do a bunch of long division problems to learn the basic principles. That's what you're doing here. Okay, you can post comments or you can email me if you're in my class. If you're not taking my class, you can still benefit from these videos. All right, shalom.